Roger Ebert, you've compiled and edited quite an astonishing collection of writing on film, and you make the point in the book that this is a subject that many writers are drawn to, many of whom we don't normally associate with film. Tolstoy, E.M. Forrester, Susan Sontag. What guided you in your choice of kind of what went in and what didn't, given the bulk of work that you probably have seen over the years?
Well, I made one rule for myself right at the beginning, and that was that everything that went into the book had to be good to read. It's not a textbook. It's not an academic book. Nobody went into the book because that person should be in the book. They only went in if the piece was worth reading. And so that's why there are some people who are missing and some people who are in the book, probably, who you're surprised to see there, because it's a book for readers. And I took about 2.5 years to put it together, reading, going to bookstores, talking to friends, looking at my own library.
Yeah, I understand a lot of it did come right out of your own shelves.
I have thousands of movie books that I've accumulated over the last 30
imagine.
years. And two of the pieces in the book I read before I was 10 years old.
Now, for me, I mean, some of the more interesting essays deal on the role and job that you fulfill, the role of critic. I mean, looking back over the 30+ years now that you've been doing what you do, I mean, how has the job changed? What have been the major fundamental differences?
Well, the job has gotten more serious for everyone. When I started, most newspaper, there were very few television film critics. I think Judith Crist was on the Today Show, and that was about it 30 years ago. Most newspaper critics were not necessarily prepared to write about film at all. They were just pushed into the job. Or there would be a house byline, and then various anonymous people would write under it. At the Tribune in Chicago, for example, they had a byline for a film critic called Matinee, which was matinee.
Right.
You know, get it? You know? And then Matinee could be a different person every day of the week. They didn't care. And thanks to a couple of influential critics in the 60s, Bosley Crowther at the New York Times, Judith Crist at the New York Herald Tribune, papers around the country began to hire full-time film critics whose job it was to be serious about the movies. And that has, I think, improved the level of popular film criticism. And at the same time, of course, we had a great standard bearer in Pauline Kael, who during that entire period of time was writing some of the best criticism anybody has ever written
on any
this
subject.
Country. Yes,
sure.
yes. And Stanley Kaufman in the New Republic could also be mentioned in the same sentence. And so people began to take films more seriously. Films were discussed in universities. They were taught in universities. Magazines, weekly newspapers. Here in Toronto you have The Eye and what's the other one? You have two weekly papers here.
Now Magazine,
right?
The Street Magazine,
where the weekly critics are given more space to be a little more serious and to go in a little more depth about the movies. So that criticism really, I think, in journalistic terms, has improved a lot.
Now, you had a Pulitzer Prize for criticism. You've been doing your column with the Sun-Times for all this period, but most people know you as a television guy with Gene Siskel. Now, there must be tremendous differences there in terms of how you review, how you approach criticism versus print. Just the
well, there is. It's a different skill, and I spend about 80% of my time working on print. I review all the films for the Sun-Times, and they're syndicated and on the web, and that's really where I spend most of my time. We do the show one day a week, and it's ad lib, except for the introductions to the clips, which are written. And that's, I'm not saying that it's not just as important or just as good. I'm just saying that it's different, because what you would write about a film might be more organized and more happily phrased than what you would think of saying right off the top of your head. In fact, I could answer this question better if I weren't doing it while talking to you. And so I think when you watch the television show, what you pick up on is energy, how we felt about it, how we feel about each other's opinion about it.
Do you worry? I mean, part of I think what people remember is this kind of ongoing, kind of good-humored rivalry between you and Siskel.
Yeah.
Do you worry that sometimes you cross over from being, a serious reviewer to being a celebrity, being a
well, God forbid
TV
that
guy?
we would ever be entertaining on television. That would be bad.
No, but you have to be, you know.
If you're on television, you are a celebrity. There's no way around that.
Full stop. You just accept that.
If you're O.J. Simpson's chauffeur, you're a celebrity. It's in the nature of television. As somebody once said in a movie called Network, it's because you're on television, dummy. And so that does change people's perception. And the reason that I spend so much time writing and working on books is because I want to also be thought of as a competent and serious film critic, and not simply as somebody who talks about movies on television.
But can you get any sense, can you measure what the influence of Siskel and Ebert and
Far
Roger
too small.
Ebert is?
Our influence is much too small.
Smaller than a lot of the critics of the critics would claim?
It's smaller than it should be, because the main influence on people going to the movies is the ad campaign and the publicity campaign.
Right.
And they will now spend, for a typical Hollywood picture, it is nothing for them to spend $20 million
And the focal point is your quotes.
to open a picture. Not our quotes, because we don't give early quotes. The early quotes, the quotes that appear 2 weeks in advance of when the movie opens, are supplied by these people who go to junkets and then write out their praise and give it to the publicists as they're on their way to the free buffet. We don't do that. Our quotes only appear after we've done the review. But the quotes are not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about trailers, about TV ads, about full-page ads in the papers, about marketing, about T-shirts, hats, funny little animals, and so forth. And they can create such an event phenomenon around a movie that people will go to it on automatic pilot. Life, for example, probably too short for most people to have taken time to see both Twister and Independence Day last summer. But they felt compelled to see these two pictures because they had heard so much about them. And so they went, and by doing so, they deprived themselves of an opportunity to see a movie that they might have liked more. In fact, I don't even know if people know if they like movies or not.
Well, that's interesting.
It's just they sit there for 2 hours and everything blows up, and then when they come out, they got their money's worth because they saw the White House blow up, or they saw a cow go up in a Twister or something. While the plot is absolutely canned. I just saw this Dante's Peak. It's the same plot. I mean, absolutely the same plot in movie after movie. Dante's Peak is Jaws, with a mountain playing the shark. Well, and so it's a shame, and I wish that we had more influence to tell people, well, check out a movie like Fargo, or Breaking the Waves, or Secrets and Lies, or Lone Star, or Welcome to the Dollhouse, which has more to say about being an unpopular teenager than any other movie I've ever seen.
Well, it's interesting. You raised those ones because I believe that virtually all of those were on your top 10 list.
They were.
And your top 10 list this year is all independents, if you include Hamlet. I mean, it's Fargo and Lone Star.
Hamlet is a Castle Rock production, but on the other hand, I think a 4-hour uncut version of Shakespeare is not necessarily major studio.
But what does that say about the major studios, where Roger Ebert doesn't choose one?
Roger Ebert didn't this year, and neither will the Academy. The Academy is likely to go with a couple of mainstream pictures like Jerry Maguire and Evita. And apart from that, most of the nominees in most of the major categories will be independent performances, independent films, screenplays, directorial jobs, because that's where the action was this year. Joe Roth, who was the head of the Disney Studios, gave a very widely noticed interview to the LA Times at the end of December saying that today the big studios are making $60 to $80 million special effects pictures, and the more discerning audience is left to choose from independent films, imports, foreign films, and movies like that. And at Oscar time, certainly nobody is proposing that Independence Day be picked as the best picture of the year, or Twister. Nobody is saying that. So that you're left with real good movies like Shine, The English Patient, movies like that.
But if you go back to your book, I mean, it's very interesting. The essay on David O. Selznick, which the great Hollywood producer. The author says that he often confused great for big, and in seeking big, never became great. I mean, this focus on the event picture and the huge budget seems to be an obsession with Hollywood that's as old as Hollywood.
I don't want to give the wrong impression. I like event pictures. I went to see Star Wars again, and I had a great time again this time. I like pictures that really work. I love the Indiana Jones pictures. But what I don't like are the pictures that are essentially just formula films spiced up with modern, new versions of the same old special effects.
Yeah. No, we wouldn't want to mislead the viewers, because in fact, I mean, you're a fan as much as a critic, which is very, very clear. I mean, you liked, I think, Cop and a Half.
I liked
Mission Impossible.
I liked
this year?
Congo. You're probably too polite to bring that up. I think Congo was one of the funniest movies of the last 2 or 3 years, and people who didn't know it was a comedy bewilder me. I can like trash too. I quote Saint Pauline Kael. The movies are so rarely great art, she said, that if we can't appreciate great trash, we have no reason to go. But what I want is great trash.
It seems to me that so many people confuse critical capacities with being negative. You seem to have never fallen into that trap. I mean, you're the happy warrior. I mean, why are you not jaded and crusty like so many people who are reviewers who seem to live to hate everything that's out there?
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you this, I think I like too many films. I looked through my other book, Roger Ebert's Video Companion, which has 1,400 reviews in it, and of course, since there are 8,000 reviews to choose from, I tend to put in movies I like more, so it looks like I gave every movie 4 stars or 3.5 stars, because you don't put in the 0-star movies so much.
But you do.
Nevertheless,
you
I
tend
probably
to review more than half thumbs up. Don't you?
No, I don't. My average is 2.6 stars. Somebody figured that out. Some doctoral candidate, I suppose. I don't know. In math, I guess. I probably am too generous. I think when you read my reviews, you have to realize that it's your money and time. I mean, you have to kind of say, well, this really sounds like I should see it, and this one sounds like Ebert liked it more than I would, because I've tried. Every once in a while, I get into a previously. I'm going to cut everything back by half a star, on the 1 to 4 star system. And the one place where I hold the line is on 4-star reviews. Last year, I gave less than 10 4-star reviews. If it gets 4 stars, I'm saying I think this is a great movie.
This will last.
Yeah, but I think I give too many 3-star reviews that should be 2.5 stars.
Someone once said on a related subject that music lovers, by definition, don't hate music. It's impossible.
Okay, that's true. Yeah.
Movie lovers.
Sometimes you see things that you like. I mean, if you see all of the actors in all of their movies, you'll. Renee Zellweger was so good in Jerry Maguire as the girlfriend. And then I saw The Whole Wide World, which is this movie where she plays Robert E. Howard's girlfriend, the man who wrote Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And he's played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who is another one of my favorite actors. You see these two people, and they're so good together and so interesting that you really enjoy the film. Somebody who didn't know who they were and walked in cold might not enjoy it as much as I did.
I read a large essay just very recently where the author tried to make the distinction between a film and a movie.
Oh, I know.
And the more you got into it, it just seemed to be one was successful and one wasn't. I mean, is that just...
And some of the best movies ever made are now studied as films. I mean, Casablanca is a movie, right? But now it's a film.
Well, I was interested in...
Citizen Kane is now a film.
In the book, again, in the Sights and Sounds ratings over the years, that in 1952, Citizen Kane wasn't even on the radar. It wasn't considered a great picture at all.
Those lists, which are the very last thing, there are 114 things in this book, and the 114th, is the compilation of Sight and Sound lists. And Sight and Sound is a British film magazine that every 10 years polls hundreds of people all over the world as to what are the greatest 10 films. And as you're quite right, in 1952, Citizen Kane was not on the list because it wasn't re-released until 58 for wide viewing. Of course, it kind of sank in 42. Everybody said it was a great film, and then it sort of disappeared. Yeah. So when they saw it, then it leapt to the top of the list, and it's been there ever since. But as you look at these films, you see a tug of war between films and movies. You see Citizen Kane and Vertigo and Stagecoach, and then you see 2001 and Rules of the Game and Akiru, and to me they're all movies, or they're all films, or they're all whatever you want to call them. What happens when you go to the movies is you go in, you sit down, and for 2 hours somebody else, usually the director, guides you in what you think, what you hear, what you see, and what you feel, and gives you a vicarious experience. And when you leave, then you can judge whether or not the vicarious experience is one you enjoyed or benefited from or are happy that you had.
Now, you said in the introduction to the book that pictures and film, more than any other art form, has the power to touch people's lives in a very, very real way. And I was interested in how film has touched your life. I mean, I was very taken that the focus that you put on Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, for example, as a picture that really was special. It talked about the American condition.
I don't cry during the movies. I think that's... I don't do most of the things that critics say they do during the movies. You know, I laughed so hard I fell out of my seat.
Right.
I've never fallen out
You
of my
encourage
seat.
necking in the back, though, I understand.
Well, necking in the back is okay, but then that doesn't have as much to do with the movies as with other things. I was I mean, in other words, I just don't take a hanky to most movies because I might be very moved, but I don't go around crying. But I had tears at the end of Do the Right Thing because it cut so much to the heart of this dilemma of tribalism in our society here in North America, where we have turned to whoever we think we are and turned away from everyone else. And it's going on all over the world. I think we have to get over this. It's left over. It's left over from the Dark Ages. It's left over from a time when you didn't meet anyone who wasn't like you. Today we meet people who aren't just like us, and we've got to see that they are our fellow creatures, and Do the Right Thing was about that.
Well, you've never kind of worn it on your sleeve. I mean, it's clear if you look through your body of work that you championed in a very subtle and quiet way the increased role of minorities in film. I mean, you came back to seeing Singleton's first film and said, this is someone who's going to be special. Is that changing? Is that getting better, or is it still a white upper class domain in North America?
The good thing that has happened with black films, first of all, you have, for many, many years, you just had stereotypes in Hollywood, and then you had a separate black cinema that played in segregated theaters for black audiences. Then you had this kind of sentimentalized liberal vision, the Sidney Poitier, Stanley Kramer films. Then you had blaxploitation, which might have been trash, but had enormous energy and kind of funneled this great creativity of actors, directors, and writers who hadn't been able to express themselves. Then blaxploitation was crushed by the rise of the mass market special effects picture, starting with Jaws and Star Wars. And then what happened was that starting again with Spike Lee and She's Gotta Have It, there was this wonderful rebirth of young black directors, filmmakers, and actors, which has led now to the point where you have 12 or 15 African-American stars in Hollywood who are big enough to top-line any picture. And you have this enormous creativity. When you're looking for really hot young directors, when you look at Spike Lee, who isn't so young anymore, but if you look at John Singleton, who's still in his 20s, if you look at the Hughes brothers, it's really thrilling, because what they're doing is they're reinventing the movies in the image of their own experiences in a way that other directors are. A lot of the white directors are reinventing genres. You know, I'm going to make a new kind of thriller, or I'm going to make a new kind of alienated youth picture or something. They're not really drawing from themselves. At the Sundance Festival this year, 6 of the first 7 films I saw were about alienated teenagers who were unemployed, cut off from society, into drugs and alcohol, and just mad at everyone. And they say in writing school, they say, write what you know. And I thought, well, this isn't what the directors know. Because we all know that in order to get an independent film made as a first-time director, you have to have enormous intelligence, energy, and ingenuity. You have to be able to... optimism, and you have to force your will and your vision. I mean, to be in your 20s and to make a film is as hard to do as anything I can think of. Nobody wants to give you the money. Nobody believes in you. Nobody cares about you. Nobody listens to you, and you do it. And so in a way, if these people were making movies about themselves, they'd be making movies about very young, ambitious, hard-driving characters instead of people hanging around the convenience store all day waiting for Godot.
Notwithstanding the rise of the independent film, I mean, you can't think of film without stars.
You're right.
And again, the book has a wonderful array of articles on the stars. But if you look at, Truman Capote on Marilyn Monroe...
Yeah. Everybody who has picked up this book turns to that piece first. It must be, the binding must be built that way. I don't know. And they all love it.
No, there's some great, Bacall on Bogart, your piece on Lee Marvin. But I look at these and say, I can't think of people who are more different in temperament, in character. I mean, you've interviewed gazillions. I mean, is there anything that's a unifying quality or attribute that makes a star a star?
They have bigger heads.
Just ego?
No, physically.
Oh, physically.
This is a theory. I'm going to give you, I could come up with some amorphous answer to that question. I'm going to give you a concrete answer.
Okay.
There is a theory that movie stars are movie stars because their heads are large in proportion to their bodies.
This is it?
Yes.
And is this a theory that you're prepared to support?
We once did this on Siskel and Ebert. We had a group shot of Clint Eastwood standing in the back of a group of cops. He was in the 3rd row. And we measured.
Whose head was the biggest?
He's in the he's further away. His head is bigger than... Lee Marvin had the biggest head you've ever seen, maybe. except for Orson Welles or Charles Lawton. Big head. Little guys with big heads make movie stars. And it's the same with, because you know why? Because when you see 6 people on the screen, one of them pops out. You look at Bogart in the Warner Brothers pictures, and he was some gunslinger in the back row of a bunch of mobsters. You know, he wasn't the star. You see Bogart, maybe because you know what he looks like now. Maybe that's it, but maybe because of that.
After Big Heads,
I just thought
what's the second quality?
Oh, the second quality. Okay, you're not too persuaded by that. I can never get anybody to believe it's as simple as that. I think it's an ability to embody. Movie stars can embody something that means something to us. Now, not everybody likes all movie stars. But if you look at the movie star that you like the most, you will find that he embodies a quality that's important to you and does it in a way that you can identify with.
Now, you've also commented, again, over the course of your career, that the quality of interviews that you're able to do now have become more and more difficult. The kind of interview you did with Lee Marvin is not possible with Kevin Costner anymore. Why is that?
With Lee Marvin, I went out to his house in Malibu on a Saturday morning, and he was hungover. In fact, I think he was already a little drunk. And we spent the rest of the day there while he got drunker. And while he insulted everybody he could think of, but in a humorous and actually in a kind of a kind way, and put down half of his movies. If you want to make a money maker, make a dummy. And The Dirty Dozen was a dummy mummy. Well, that's how he was talking. But anyway, it's my favorite piece. It's a wonderful piece. I think when you read that piece, you know something about Lee Marvin at the end of the piece.
What have they done? Have they made these stars simply an extension of the marketing department now?
You never find anyone like that. Today, you get the hotel room seance. You know, you're carted in for 10 minutes of television or half an hour or 45 minutes of print with somebody who's on a press tour and has all these sound bites that have been worked out with a publicist because they know exactly what the message is. And the stars are staying on message the same way presidential candidates are staying on message.
Now, I understand that something else is happening, is that often the studios and the producers, if they believe a film is a stinker, that is that it won't be received well by the critics, but that in fact it will find an audience anyway because it's got a star or appeals to a very young demographic, they won't let you review the picture.
That often is the case. Meet Wally Sparks, the Rodney Dangerfield picture, was not screened for the critics. The Pest was not screened for the critics. On the other hand, sometimes they guess wrong. They didn't screen Tombstone for the critics, and they probably cost Val Kilmer an Academy Award nomination. Because when the critics finally caught up with that, they loved it.
Right.
Another thing, though, that's the other side of that coin is sometimes they'll screen movies that they have a feeling the critics aren't going to like because they feel they're critic-proof and that if they can get the subject matter out there, the audience will come. You take Dante's Peak, for example. The volcano destroys a little village on the mountainside movie. In general, it's a competent, skillful picture with good special effects. It's just such a formula picture that there aren't any surprises in it. But no matter what we say on our show about it, and it got 2 thumbs down, 2 affectionate thumbs down, we're going to show clips of the volcano exploding.
Right.
And people are going to sit there and they're going to say, I think I'd like to go see the volcano explode. The critics didn't like it, but it looks like it would be fun. So the studios are very wise. They realize that even in knocking a picture, critics can publicize it, and if the subject matter is appealing, people will buy tickets.
What does that say about popular culture, though? I mean, to your earlier point that critics should have a bigger role because they, in turn, have some expertise and perspective that probably the public should tap into. I mean, it suggests that, or it seems that, it doesn't matter what you tell them, that there's a crassness of popular culture that...
I think critics in general, not just Siskel and Ebert, but critics in general have saved and made certain pictures. I think Fargo, Lone Star, going back a few years, pictures like My Dinner with Andre,
which you were credited
and Hoop Dreams,
right, both of those
are pictures that critics were able to, well, but not just Siskel and Ebert. I mean, everybody loved those movies.
Right.
And so people began to say, okay, well, maybe it's time I should break down and see a good movie. Let me tell you a parable. Because I feel that people are much more willing to go to a movie they think is going to be mediocre than they are willing to go to a movie that they think is going to be good. It's wrong to believe that people want to go to good movies. They're very suspicious of good movies. They're very willing to go to midstream movies. And I got a call once at the Sun-Times, more than 20 years ago, from a reader who said, we're going to the movies tonight, and in the Wilmette Theater near our home, they're playing Cries and Whispers by Ingmar Bergman. What can you tell us about that movie? And I said, well, I think it's the best movie of the year. And the reader said, oh, that doesn't sound like anything we'd like to see. And that is so true.
I know that does happen.
When
I know
you tell
that's
people,
people say Sense and Sensibilities, just sounds too weird for me.
You say, Breaking the Waves is the strongest emotional experience I've had at the movies in 6 months, with a brilliant performance by Emily Watson. And they'll say, oh, good. What do you think about Jerry Maguire? In other words, they want a little less. They're not really up for, you know?
But I mean,
I don't feel like going to the French restaurant tonight. I just feel like burgers.
No, but then I think there is. I mean, it's interesting. You have the moviegoer, you have the critics, and you have the studios. And there's a kind of the critics, you know, think the studios are doing a crummy job. Yet the studios are constantly plugging in.
Well, it's a mass,
moviegoing,
you know, but
audience.
The job of the critic, I think, is to be a little better moviegoer, if possible, and to say, look, there's nothing wrong with a disaster movie, but wait for a good one. You can't see them all. You know, already this year we're going to have another volcano movie, and I think we're getting a hurricane and a tidal wave. I'm not sure. We've already had the killer bees. You can't see them all, so wait for a really good one.